also see some people that do it on their own. I also see people that change their mind they're a little bit flaky, and that's common of entrepreneurs. I'm an entrepreneur, so it's, one day I want to do this, and the next week I've got this, and then I heard about that, and I want to pursue it, and so their options might change, and their desires might change very often. That again kind of falls into that having a plan, having a goal, sticking to it sort of thing, and trying to get the emotions out of it. Yeah, I see a lot of them. I let the emotions take over, even when they're, an owner of a mental health place. We all have them, and it's understandable why. But that's why they seek out professionals like myself and others who can kind of help them. We've been through hundreds of deals, and we can tell them, what to expect and so forth. And that's what we do. Many times a founder is asked to roll a portion of their equity in their business into the new company, right? So I'm going to buy your business, but I'm only going to buy 80%. I'd like you to continue being a 20% owner. Some founders that I work with are, okay with this. Some are against it. What I tell most of them is to be pretty flexible, pretty open to it, right? So I know that what you might want to do is get 100% for the value of your business and ride off into the sunset, and love your free life. Let's be open to it, because some buyers might offer you that, they might give you that, but it might be the terms might be way different, right? Way worse or way tougher than the buyer that might offer you 70, 80, 90% of your business, but wants you to be involved, wants you to help, and wants you to continue. And you might like their deal and who they are better. And it could be great for you.
All right. I'm going to do a quick intro, and you can correct me at the end if I mess something up. But let me give everybody listening to this your bona fides. So you're the managing director of Healthcare Capital Advisors, one of the leading investment banking firms advising behavioral health organizations on strategy, growth, and exit planning. You've helped addiction treatment centers, autism centers, mental health providers, and specialty clinics across the country structure deals, secure capital, navigate partnerships, all while keeping provider values at the center. And I know from talking to you before, in person and on webinars, that integrity is key for you, which we love. You're not just about the spreadsheets and valuations. You're somebody who's worked hand in hand with founders, many of them clinicians, helping them translate their passion. And this is very much a passion industry, especially in addiction space, into sustainable impact. You understand what makes behavioral health unique and how financial strategy can either support or compromise that mission. My plan today in our conversation is to unpack how your journey got you to where you are now, dig into trends and things that are reshaping behavioral health investment, and offer people listening to this podcast practical insights in terms of scaling, considering capital partners, or just trying to make sense of what value means in their industry. As always, it's a pleasure talking to you. Thank you for being here today. Maybe we'll kick it off by hearing from you, your story, maybe correcting my intro if I said something that doesn't make sense. And I guess talking about how you found your way into behavioral health and what led you to where you are today.
Sure. That's a lot. Well, I appreciate you having me. And thanks for the intro and the accolades or praise there. I'm humbled. You might have oversold me, but I don't know that I have anything to correct. I can go through those things one at a time that you mentioned. So background or history. After school and sports were done, I had a very short stint at Wall Street. Just didn't really, somewhat I didn't care for the pace, but really I didn't care for the faceless, relationshipless selling of equities and investments and so forth to people. So I opened a financial planning firm in Nashville, and then it expanded to Louisville, which is where some family was from. And I did that for about, 12, 14 years. I sold that in 2015, I believe. And so I had a year-ish that it took me before I figured out what to do. I was pretty bored of golf and traveling. Yeah. And so I was picking the brain of some buddies of mine who I knew were in mergers and acquisition. I knew that when I had clients in the financial planning business, the wealth management stuff, that were buying or selling companies, I enjoyed it. It was interesting. I liked it. So that's why I thought this might be interesting. I was picking their brain. And after it sounded like that was the way I was going to go and going to look for a big company, they were like, Jacob, we know you, like you're going to hate it. You're going to stare at spreadsheets for 5 years and work for a manager. And, you're going to want to do things differently than the way they're doing it. You're not going to like it. So if you want, you can come work with us. and start doing deals tomorrow. But yeah, you just got to learn the space. Obviously, you don't know anything about health. I didn't. I definitely didn't know anything about behavioral health. I didn't know anything about healthcare in general. I wasn't even a patient yet, right? I was still in good health and so forth. So, um, anyway, they were a very boutique investment bank that just did home health and hospice. And so they said, hey, we get calls for behavioral health companies all the time. This is so 2016, 17 in there somewhere. And they said, hey, if you want to learn it, you can grow it. You can have this. This can be your space. So I did, and the industry was very, very kind to me. So I had quite a few buddies that worked in the industry that might have been in recovery or they just fell into it one way or another. I, asked all of them to pick their brain. I read every day. It was kind of, baptism by fire, drinking through a fire hose for 6 months to learn the lingo and all that stuff. But eventually had a good feel for the way things will go and noticed some things that were different about the industry than what I was used to in other spaces. Yeah. And just, it was very, very kind to me. Like the behavioral health industry in general, there's a lot of those people that are just very kind people that are looking to help others, that, it's part of their life, what they've learned about themselves and how they need to interact, that they are out there to help others. So they were very generous to me with their knowledge and information and time. And that's how I learned the space. That's how I fell into the space, and I've been doing it ever since. I was at that firm until a few years ago, and then left and started this one, Healthcare Capital Advisors, HCA. We are growing very quickly, very recently. If you look at some of our announcements from this week, we just started an intern program. So there's 10 new, very bright kids from all over the country that are
Nice.
board for the next 3 months, and then we just started a consulting wing that Lisa Richardson is heading. She was just the CEO of Beyond Healthcare, a teen adolescent mental health substance use disorder treatment center in Ohio with a few locations that she founded. And she's brought on a team of 9 other women who are incredible. I've met them all, and they've all started on new deals, new contracts, new clients in all sorts of different spaces within behavioral health. And so we're rocking and rolling on the consulting front. And yeah, they are all rock stars. I was amazed by every one of them. I was very complimentary of her and her judgment so far. So excited about that. But
Nice.
in general, or when I founded it, was just to do the same as the last firm, right? So boutique investment bank. We don't really do a lot of other work outside of mergers and acquisitions, and now some consulting. Mostly it's all healthcare services that we really focus on, but our specialty is behavioral health, mental health companies, and usually lower middle market. So for our purposes, that's usually about $1 million of EBITDA to about 7 or 8. We have some clients that are above there. The reason we say that is that usually once people are above there, once a deal is selling for over 100 mil or something, usually those companies are a little bit more sophisticated, structured, et cetera, and they are looking for the Hoolahans, the Harris Williams, the Lazards to come in there and show them all the bells and whistles. Wow, I don't have those resources, that size team yet, or anything to do that. We play in this lower middle market, which has been great. There's pros and cons to it. I'm happy to go through with you, but I'd say we're also about 70% sell side, 30% buy side. That's our target, and that's where we currently are. We've got a few buy side mandates currently, and the majority of it is sell
Yeah.
side.
If I've learned anything about working in behavioral health and technology in general, is stick to your lane and be really good at doing 1 or 2 things instead of being mediocre at doing 10 things. So it's good to know, like, this is what I'm good at. This is where I can help people. This is what I do best. I think your
Yeah.
introduction to behavioral health is pretty similar to mine. I came into the industry in 2015, having had primarily a technical engineering background, and plan is to build Opus, and had no idea what behavioral health is. And the company that we started Opus with we were sort of an in-house product for a while, was specializing in addiction, and certainly had no idea about that at all. So spend my first couple days hand in hand with nurses in a detox facility in South Florida, and case managers and therapists. And I had I don't know about you, I've heard this from different people that didn't know anything about the industry until they came into it, but I had a very ignorant view of the industry. I had this kind of perspective that people that are recovering addicts must have had something in their childhood or something that happened with them where they were like, I'm just going to use drugs. And that's such an ignorant view of it, because it's people like you and I, professionals and people of all walks of life, that become addicts for one reason or another, whether they had surgery or whatever reason. And it just kind of opened up this new kind of uh, uh, view of the space that I had no idea about. I was very ignorant about it. And like you, I think people are very kind to me too. A lot of the people that I work with at the facilities, and once we start selling the software as a service, were willing to teach you the ropes and kind of show you what happens and what doesn't happen and how it compares with other industries and overall behavioral health. So, um, yeah, it was very interesting start for me as well.
Yeah, completely agree with you. Your first point there about good to stay in your lane. Yeah, so we've got an amazing advisory board. Again, people in this space have just been so generous to me to volunteer their time to help us out and get us headed in the right direction and so forth. But I'd ask them very early on, am I still doing the right thing by staying very, very narrow and deep, right, in one section instead of being more of a generalist and taking deals from everywhere? Because look, we started this, year and a couple of years ago, a little more than that, whatever it was. People don't want to admit it or talk about it, but we were in a recession in 2023 and 24. Like, you look at the amount of deals done, it was very, very low. And that was even generous reporting. So it was a very tough time. And I was worried, hey, are we doing the right thing here? And, their advice was the same, like, know what you're very good at and be very good at it. Don't try to be everything for everybody, right? Which I've heard many times, but this was a opportunity in my life where I really had to make a decision based on that. And we decided to stay true to that. So we are very, very focused and not too often distracted or concerned with what goes on outside of our space. Some of it we need to, but for the most part, we don't pay a lot of attention. Yeah, to your other piece there, very similar. I had the same views of behavioral health, right? And we even have plenty of people in my past and my history and my own lifestyle and in our family of mental health, behavioral health, addiction, et cetera, these sort of things going on. And yet still the stigma back then, I'm
Mm,
mid 40s. The stigma back then was that was a bad decision or it's, bad experiences or surroundings or whatever it might have been that caused these things. It's not a disease. And whether or not people even still debate that stuff, I don't know where that stands currently, but I just mean, I definitely had the thought of it was all touchy feely foo medicine. You know what I'm saying?
hmm
It wasn't like I broke my arm, fix it. It wasn't that kind of healthcare. It was fringy stuff over there. So it's all new to me and quite a learning curve.
Or because of that, and because I've obviously kind of obvious to you because you deal with the operators. So there's a much higher incidence in the behavioral health space of somebody in recovery themselves becoming an operator, right? I've met countless people at conferences, customers of ours that went through, say, in the addiction space, went through some sort of, or are recovering addicts themselves. And they're like, actually, I think I can replicate or do this better than the recovery facility that I went to. How does that play a role in what you offer them? I think just from my perspective, when you're dealing with a sort of a career business person, they have their KPIs in place, they know what they're trying to achieve, they can open up any sort of business and they know like this is what we're trying to accomplish. When you have somebody who's got sort of a passion that turns into a business and all of a sudden they're like in a whirlwind of what do I do to grow this thing? And now you got to open up a new facility, you've got to open up more beds or different levels of care because of pressure. How does that play a role in what you offer them and kind of getting them ready for an acquisition? What's the mindset there?
First of all, it's very, very common within this space and it's very, very unique among overall, merger and acquisitions across all sectors. So it doesn't happen in a lot of other places as much as it does here. As far as how it plays a role, I think what you could get at is that a lot of those people that came from the field or were a patient, I'm not only a customer, I'm the president, right? That sort of thing. Historically, they may have done a great job and built a great business, but lots of times they're just not business savvy, people would tell them. So they're like, hey, you've great business, now hand it over to the experts. On the other hand, you've got plenty of those people that did that continued to work on themselves and are very self-aware and are very capable of asking for help and accepting help and letting people thrive what they do best. It still does take some training to get very good at that in a business setting and still run a show or be a part of a show and know where your best role is. But basically, I guess what I'm saying is that it doesn't necessarily matter what their history, their past, their background was with addiction or with any sort of other mental health, diagnosis. It's more about that person, what they can do with themselves, right? Because anybody, they can grow the business very well. The question is, are they able to continue to scale it to the next level, right? That's usually where people run into problems. I've seen a ton of them where, they've started something or taken something over and grown it. It's great. They've done a fantastic job, but there usually is a limit to that. I don't see regional players, right? People with, they're in 5, 10 states, bunch of locations, thousands of patients and employees, you know, $10 million on the bottom line that are being run by a former patient. You know what I mean?
Got it.
So there's just usually some point at which they realize or are told or helped with, hey, there's probably a better way for us to structure this and scale this. And that's not always the case. I've seen some people succeed and they can continue to do it. I'm not saying they shouldn't. I just mean, if you're asking me, how does that happen, or what's the difference in the way that I deal with them? I don't deal with them any differently, right? I deal with everyone fairly the same as far as process and what we're taking them through. But obviously, the way I speak to people is different based on who they are.
Got it. And I guess when you get to a certain level of sophistication in the space, you're saying some of the players you see, like a regional player with 10 plus locations, hundreds of beds, they have somebody that comes in and kind of helps them run the business or scale it or get it to the next level type of thing?
I mean, often it would be tough for you or I to get to that stage, if we started one to get there without using someone else's capital, because it takes a while in this industry, right? You're waiting to get paid. So, and what are your margins? Like, the larger you get, often the smaller they're getting, but say the average is a 20% margin or something, or a 25% margin, it's just going to take a long time to get to that size. So if we're talking about somebody that's at that size, chances are they've already taken on capital. They've probably already got a partner or a backing or somebody doing the back office work and the operations centrally, and they've probably got help with a management team.
Got it. So I guess that leads me to something I wanted to ask you. I think when I think of operators in the behavioral mental health addiction space, I think that there's this misconception of capital need or acquisition or merging with another organization, that an operator may think, I'm just not organized enough or I'm not sophisticated enough to attract the right investor, or, I'm going to grow this thing until I'm ready to actually have a buyer come and take me out and I retire and sail into the sunset kind of situation. So what are some applications that you worked, like some operators that you worked with, that where you provided like cash flow, or like what are some ways that you work with these operators at your company? Do you focus primarily on like acquisitions? Do you work with them if they're like trying to get to a certain size? How do you work with them?
Yeah, so I think what you're talking about there is us preparing them for that next stage. So, usually probably should have gone over that earlier when I was discussing the company, but we do things a little different from some other competitors. And one of the main things that we prefer is that we're talking to people who are planning ahead, right? So they're thinking about selling in the future. Is that 6 months, a year, 2 years, 5 years, whatever it is? It might be people we've known for a very long time. But what we don't want to be is their call when they're like, hey, I got to sell this tomorrow, throw something together, send it to the network, and we'll see what offers we get. We want to deal with them, help them strategize, and consult them on all aspects of the business to put it in the best position it can be in when it's time to decide next steps, right? And those next steps might not be selling, right? I mean, or you could sell to your management team or, employees. You could sell to your family. You could, there's a number of different things. It's not always the founder selling to a private equity firm like everybody, I think, envisions. That's not always what happens. And there's a number of other things that can happen. The nonprofits can get involved. There's a lot of things that could happen about that next stage. The owner, the management team really need to discuss amongst themselves what is important to them so that they figure out, then we can find out what the best option is, the best path to get there. And they should involve all the stakeholders. That might be family, might be a number of different things. Maybe they have charitable interests. There's a ton of different things to consider when you're thinking about your future. And then once you get that stuff a little more concrete and you get a good idea of what it is that matters to you, what the values are, the mission, the vision, where we're going, what we're headed to, then you can kind of back into whatever that next step is, or whatever that step is at the end to get there. What do we do? How do we accomplish this? Well, if it is a sale, then let's figure out who the right buyer is, what those metrics are that we need to get to certain levels to get the numbers we want or the terms we want. And we go over with clients what those drivers of value are. There's some that are external, you can't control, macroeconomic factors, politics, regulations, interest rates, tax rate, these sort of things. There's internal drivers you can control, right? The number of locations or the number of all sorts of scale and type of things. There's a number of different things, right? Contracts, all that stuff. We help go all that stuff. And then along with in preparation, what I see most often, depending on the size we're talking about, but if we're talking about the size companies that are my clients, usually, like I said, the lower middle market, probably $1 million to $8 million of bottom line. Usually what's happened is they have provided great service over years, however it started and wherever it is now. And knowing their numbers and their financials has not been a priority. If they're at the high end of that spectrum, maybe by now they have a CFO or a VP of finance or a comptroller or somebody that's at least overseeing them somewhat or trying to organize them. But if they're at the smaller end of that, none of them have any idea what's going out, what's coming in. Is it good? Is it bad? Are they up? Are they down? How are they trending, et cetera? They're just looking at what they're taking home or how full their capacity is, their census is. So I think, we're usually recommending clients to get a quality of earnings done preemptively on the sell side, especially in the way the market's been. We want to make it easy on buyers to realize this is a real deal. The numbers are true. We're not just putting something out there to get your attention and then you're going to find out it's way less. You're going to offer less and we're going to convince our clients to sell. That's not this sort of we do. That's not this investment bank. So we're also suggesting we have the legal conversation with somebody that's experienced in healthcare law, right? Up front, early and often. I know they can be expensive and we help minimize that in a number of different ways, but we still want to get them involved early and often to minimize tax. You can change things about entities and so forth and structure of the business to minimize the amount you're giving away to the IRS, compliance audits and making that stuff is in place, like compliance regulation in this industry is obviously a big deal. And compliance has been more and more a sticking point in deals, right? I mean, it's just, they're so highly regulated. There's so much headline risk from the buyers that they want to make sure that everything about your business is on the up and up, and at least that you're honest about it and it's disclosed and so forth. So I've probably rambled and there's probably 10 more minutes I could talk about things that we do to prepare, but I think that's what you're asking about is, we go through from A to Z what you need to do to prepare to be in the best position you can be in to sell.
Yeah. Sounds like financials is paramount. You got to know your numbers. You can't just be worried about, this is what I made this year. This is how much the company's bringing in, or you got to really know what's going on. But if it's, financials sounds like, the bedrock of being in a position to be acquired. What are some other sort of intangibles like outcomes, leadership, branding, that could play a role in the potential successful acquisition or the success of the acquisition itself?
All those things you mentioned are so, and I'll go through them. I would just say that the reason I mentioned financials up there is not because I'm focused on financials. I'm going to tell you that the buyers are. I mean, they're usually doing it as an investment, right? There's not as many that are done altruistically. Most of them are to make money on. So those matter, and I just often see them not paid as much attention to. People don't know what their net working capital is or what their rates are, or what their cash waterfall looks like or their AR is, or these sort of things need to be organized and need to be very smooth and easily understood, right? Very clear. And I don't see those as often, especially in the smaller companies. But to answer your question, look, culture is a big deal. You do not want to have a tumultuous or an antagonistic workplace for everyone's benefit, for yours, for your employees, for a sale, for everything. You want it to be a productive and amicable workplace where people are maybe challenging each other, but definitely supporting and can definitely speak truth and be heard and understood in a place that is also an example to all the patients, whatever you're treating. But yeah, it's going to go a long way with a buyer, especially the management team, right? Are they able to identify or notice problems, or are they just crazy in their pride and ego and not realistic? And then if once they have identified those, are they able to find solutions and able to work through things and able to ask for help and receive help and so forth? Or is it just kind of a very toxic
And
environment?
have you seen deals like make or break because of culture? Like they got in there, it's like all the numbers look good and it's like a mess.
For sure. Most definitely. In many cases, actually, should I say many? In a handful of cases, I can think of where even the management team or the owner was so difficult for the buyer that they just, the buyer just didn't have interest in the deal, right? No matter how good this looked or anything else, the management meeting or the dinner or the conversation or whatever it was didn't go so well, and they were not interested. I mean, there's so many opportunities out there currently that, yeah, you do need to deliver on everything. I think financials might be the most important to the buyers currently, but also each buyer is different and they each have a different thing they're looking for. So they could all be searching for a certain geography or a certain service line or level of care or culture or whatever it might be. Um, a lot of it, I'll be honest with you, is focused on the dollars. It's an investment for them, right? So they want to make sure that those numbers are all good and real and clear, but also how can we replicate what's going on currently, making sure that doesn't stop, and then how can we grow it and scale it? So what's our plan next? The other stuff they view, I think, most of them, as all ancillary things that feed into that goal. So are we also helping people? Of course, we want outcomes, we want results, we want to do the right thing, we want to get people healthy, build healthier communities, have a great workplace for employees, all these sort of things, but they all are feeding into that point. If we do all those things, we're going to be financially sound. It's going to be a good financial investment. So the culture matters, the human talent, of course, the human capital matters, but it's tough currently. Yeah, results, the outcomes obviously are getting more and more important, but a lot of that's a whole other conversation that I could go on forever. But I think some of that is a facade. It's lip service to do with our value-based care talk and all that baloney.
Yeah.
But we'll see.
Got it. And I guess on that theme, what are some mistakes that operators make when they are kind of thinking about an acquisition? What are some things you've seen maybe before they contact you or just along the way after you've engaged them and you kind of gave them a blueprint for like, this is the roadmap to success if you want to be acquired. And then they go on and do other things. It makes me think, like we were talking about, like the culture, makes me think of that show, The Prophet, with Marcus Lemonis. You ever seen that?
Love him. Yeah, I love him. That's great.
Yeah, I love him too. So he goes in and I mean, it's for television, obviously. So it's like so much drama, but you get in there, you got this massive business making, I don't know, pies in Cape Cod in the Florida Keys or something. You get in, and the owner's a crazy person yelling at people and stuff. So
Yeah, the interesting part that you can learn from that show of what you're just saying is say he just went there to buy that company of cakes and pies.
mhm.
Well, it's also because last week or last year or whenever he also bought a styrofoam or aluminum company that builds the holders for those cakes and pies, or a ice cream company that goes with it, or a whatever, a delivery service, or a realtor in a shopping, a supermarket. Like it's the same with private equity. If they can get all their portfolio companies to work with each other, if they're all interacting, a rising tide raises all ships, right? Like they've figured that out, and it can be very, very advantageous, and that's why they look for add-ons and complementary portfolio companies and so forth. Just as an aside about
No, it makes a
the
lot of sense. We were talking earlier that we get approached all the time, and 9 times out of 10, they have some kind of, related business that they're trying to complement.
for sure. So mistakes, man, I could go on and on. I'm going to try to get this succinct or think about ranking them or prioritizing them. I think often, again, the financials I mentioned, those are usually often a mess, not usually, but often a mess. Often they don't have a clear goal, right? So they haven't said, hey, my wife and I are going to retire by this age. My husband and I are going to, go here and do this, or we need this much money, or for this reason, we're done at this point, or whatever it might be. They don't have a clear plan that they're adhering to. It's much more emotional and feeling. And I can get into that later, but that leads down the line. So the whole deal with a lot of emotion, which you're going to have emotion. This is your baby. You grew it. You've grown from that. It matters, and there is emotion involved. But if you let that emotion dictate some of your decisions and your reactions to things, it's gonna tank that deal. I mean, it's gonna be trouble for you. It's gonna be very difficult. But I would say if they come with a clear plan of, we got to this number, we got to this place, we got to this date, we got to whatever, and now it's time to think about what our next steps are, or we've done a great job. We've just been plateaued for 2 years. How do we can't get over this. We're kind of at max with our margins and our capacity, this is what we could do. Well, maybe we need to look at a growth partner, right? Some additional capital. So who's the right one to do that? How are they going to fit in? What are they going to offer? Especially what are they going to offer besides money, right? So money is fairly, I would say it's all the way cheap right now, but I'm just saying it's pretty common and available out there, right? So uh, what else are they going to bring to you besides money? How are they going to help? Hopefully, with some relationships, some of those other complementary portfolio companies, maybe contracts. Maybe they know somebody at the payers that they've got a favorable relationship with because they've got other providers. I mean, they need to bring something else besides that.
And do you see deals generally being put together where the owner retains part of it and just kind of continues as an operator for a while, or because I guess in that scenario they participate in the upside of like these acquisitions and combining the portfolio?
Correct. So I see them both. So many times a founder is offered, asked to roll a portion of their equity in their business into the new company, right? So I'm going to buy your business, but I'm only going to buy 80%. I'd like you to continue being a 20% owner. Some founders that I work with are, okay with this. Some are against it. What I tell most of them is to be pretty flexible, pretty open to it, right? So I know that what you might want to do is get 100% for the value of your business and ride off into the sunset, and love your free life. But let's be open to it, because some buyers might offer you that, they might give you that, but it might be the terms might be way different, right? Way worse or way tougher than the buyer that might offer you 70, 80, 90% of your business, but wants you to be involved, wants you to help, and wants you to continue. And you might like their deal and who they are better. And it could be great for you. So, I think you wanted to talk about this when you mentioned it before, but that's another problem out there, is that I think investment banking, private equity, everybody involved with the finances and the financials of healthcare, I think, get a bad rap pretty much. Like if you mention them, some people are already, gross and stay away and
Yeah.
that sort of. And I understand why. Like there are plenty of horror stories. I've heard them, I've seen them, I've been in them, I've watched them happening. But that's not 100% of the cases, right? It's actually a pretty small portion of the cases, but that's just like all of us as humans, as we consume any news or media or story or anything, that is the stuff that we see and hear and then internalize, right? But
Yeah.
it's not the
And
actual.
make it the baseline or the standard. Every money guy sucks, or all lawyers are terrible.
And that's not true. There's so many of those people that have sold all or a portion of their business to a financial buyer and used somebody like me to do it, and everything has gone fantastic, right? I mean, it's been better than they could have imagined. Their company grew. Everyone at their company is happy. Everyone's getting paid better and benefits, and the patients are getting treated better and so forth. And they've had great success stories. I know them all over the place, but those aren't as commonly celebrated as the disasters, right? So, yeah, I don't know. I could go down a rabbit hole at a bunch of these things, but I think your earlier question, maybe I'm on the one before, was about what mistakes providers make,
Yeah.
owners.
Yep.
I don't know what the one after that was that we were just talking about, but the mistakes, I went over a couple. I also see some people that do it on their own. I also see people that change their mind they're a little bit flaky, and that's common of entrepreneurs. I'm an entrepreneur, so it's, one day I want to do this, and the next week I've got this, and then I heard about that, and I want to pursue it, and so their options might change, and their desires might change very often. That again kind of falls into that having a plan, having a goal, stick it to it sort of thing, and trying to get the emotions out of it. Yeah, I see a lot of them. I let the emotions take over, even when they're, an owner of a mental health place. We all have them, and it's understandable why. But that's why they seek out professionals like myself and others who can kind of help them. We've been through hundreds of deals, and we can tell them, what to expect and so forth. And that's what we do. So we go over a whole list, a checklist at the beginning when we're talking strategy about how to deal with, your buddy at the golf course that says, "Hey, I heard you were selling," or that says, "Hey, I just sold mine for 20 times my revenue," or something like that. And you're like, "Hey, why aren't we getting this?" So we go through everything and all those hypothetical scenarios and conversations to try to guide people and put up the guardrails as best we can.
That's actually, I was going to ask you about that. You probably get a lot of that golf course conversation where like, oh, why am I getting this? And this somebody got like this crazy valuation. Of course, the answer is probably they're not telling you the whole story. There's some version of it that they're wanting to boast about or whatever, but that's got
It
to be
was
difficult to navigate. I mean, it's good that you have a kind of a framework for it to educate them, but that's got to be hard to navigate too, right?
it's all the time, of course. I mean, we're all human. We all have these things. But I mean, I can give you a real world example. There was one. This was, I guess, last year. A couple partners owned mental health, like an outpatient mental health, like a counselor's therapist place in the southeast, and had great conversations. Blah blah blah. Everything was good. They were sellable, etc. It was a good business, and we all got along. We had many conversations back and forth, and then when I was waiting for some paperwork and more data and so forth, just conversation just ceased one day, and I was like, "It's weird," and they didn't answer for many months. Then many months later, one of the partners had responded to me and said, "Well, the other one that this one was still ready to sell. The other one, her husband or fiance's like brother or somebody had just sold his pulmonary like surgery business or something for a huge amount, and it took like 18 months and all this stuff. So he told her, you shouldn't do this. You should hold on to it, and it's going to take forever." And I'm like, that's like me, I don't know, driving a Ford Ranger and telling you how your Ferrari drives or something. Like they're not the same thing. So, but this is, I'm not blaming them. This is, obviously I didn't make them feel safe enough that when she heard that, she could just reach out to me and say, "Hey, is this true?" Or what should I expect? Instead, she just went with what she had heard. That's all of us. We're going to go with those people that are close to us, that we know, that we trust. That's, who we're going to believe and value their advice. So it's tough in my job, like you said, to build that relationship and then keep everyone, sane, because we all get scared and crazy and so forth. I mean, I did when I was selling my own business the last time. Like it's tough. It's a human condition. It's a human emotion that's tough selling your business. So
Yeah, I agree 100%. Are you seeing more activity in like the autism space, outpatient mental health, substance use? How's that looking now, and what do you see in the next 2 to 3 years, especially given like the economy and what like conversations around that? What do you see?
sure. 2 to 3 years is a tough one. But so, yes, to answer your question. So, behavioral health and in this healthcare services in general has been a little bit different to me, just in how kind of cyclical it is. Meaning, I don't know what subsectors you want to say, but let's call it addiction treatment, outpatient mental health, inpatient psych, hospitals, therapy, eating disorder, and IDD. And then there's digital health, and there's probably some ancillary stuff. Between those, whatever I just named, maybe a handful of them, they kind of rotate all the time, every, say, 6 months to 24 months, between who's the
In terms
darling.
of like what people are looking for?
Yeah, between like who's the, getting the biggest valuation, who's the darling, who's the most in demand by all the investors, all this stuff. And it just keeps rotating. Like think
Oh,
about,
interesting.
a decade ago, SUD treatment was just the darling, right? You could have gotten timed for anything, right? And there was a little bit of fraud going on in the industry back then, but all I mean is this rotates all the time. So that question, that's why I just say that I give this caveat to start with, that I can tell you my feelings right now. I'm just saying that it will rotate as it has and as it will continue to. So currently, yeah, I would say that ABA treatment, ABA therapy of ASD treatment is probably the most in demand, I would say. I'm seeing a ton of deals. We've got a couple deals of that going on now, and I've had a dozen conversations over the past few weeks. So I think we'll have a lot more. The same on the buy side, meaning I have a ton of buyers that are interested in it. There's a lot of reasons why, but I would say it's probably the most in demand now. Outpatient mental health has been for probably the past, I don't know, 2 years, maybe three. And I think it still is in the top 2 or 3. Like it's still very, very in demand. It's just the model that was proven by LifeStance, Refresh, and some of these others, and has been carried on with Arc Health and Transformations Care Network, Geode Health, a bunch of other places. Is it works, right? The therapist, your psychologist, your counselor, whoever you see weekly, they would prefer to just see patients all day and then go home, be paid well for it, and help people, and that's the end. They don't want to think about the stuff I don't want to think about.
Marketing or yeah, patient acquisition, intakes and stuff.
Yes, IT, legal, all the things that go into running a business is a headache for somebody, and especially usually clinicians, right? Especially usually people that are experts in healthcare. They usually don't have the same skill sets. So the investors and the larger providers and everybody that's available to that has come in and said, "Hey, we'll do all that stuff for you. Let us be your partner. We'll fill up your calendar. You just come in and see patients and so forth and so on." So that model of doing that, which then ends up kind of becoming a staffing model, but we can add some other things to it to make it much more attractive. But that sort of model has been established and shown that it works as an investment thesis. And so it's been pursued heavily for the past few years. And I think will continue to be at least for the next few years. I mean, there's no doubt if I go outside, I feel good about patient demand, right? If you go
Hmm.
outside and meet people, there are people that need help, right? There are people all over, and we all do, that have issues that if we can reduce the stigma enough, that's a whole other conversation I'd love to have with you. But if we can get people to normalize and feel comfortable saying, "Hey, I need help,
I
man.
need help.
I'm
Yeah.
I'm frustrated with this. I got this anger issue. I got this whatever it is. I'm depressed. I got whatever it is, and that's okay." And then find the help and then accept it. That's one thing. Like so, for me, for instance, like I see these stats from. I'm not going to go all the way down the stigma road, but just give me 1 second, and I'll come
Yeah.
back
Of
to saying
course.
SUD is still valuable in eating disorders, and digital health for sure is. I see this stat all the time that says like less than 20%, it might be less than 10% of people that need help get help, seek help, right? And so I'm like, give me more information there, because these are people that are saying they need help, so they're aware of it, and yet only 10% or less or something are actually getting it. And then I'm like, are they getting it because they're not seeking it, or because they can't get it? It's not accessible for them. Because the portion of them that it's not accessible for, that's my job, right? That's what I'm doing here, consolidating this industry, is making, hopefully, getting there to be greater access for patients at a better cost with better treatment with predictable outcomes, right? So that's what's going to happen in this industry. It's what happens in every industry, and that's a good thing. And I want there to be greater access, and I want it to be more affordable and better treatment. Like those are all good things. We want to do it in the right way, and that's what my job is. But what I'm finding and hearing is that, hey, there's all this demand and not enough supply. Well, I'm also hearing in places that we're not full, that we've got capacity, or it was a slow year or something like that. And then I know that the outside stressors in the world, I go outside and I see people, and I know that those stressors exist and people need some help. So why isn't it happening? I think it's that other piece where people aren't seeking it. And the two reasons I see, right, are either that it's difficult for them, like if I'm a single mom, right, and I don't know, I had a surgery and I started, whatever pain pill they put me on, eventually they didn't, and I was still in pain. I had to get something. The cheaper way to do it was this, and now I'm kind of hooked on this thing. But I've got a job, I'm functioning, I do other things, I've got kids. It's not going to be easy to check out a life for 30 days and get well. So it's either that piece of access, which I think some of it exists, but I struggle to see it be the main part. Or it is people just don't want to do it because they're scared, because the stigma still exists. Like we were talking about earlier, that people are going to view them in their lives as weak, or they made a bad decision, or it's their fault, or blah, blah, blah. And we're worried about what other people think about us. And we're not normalizing and publicizing and celebrating enough those that ask for help and those that get well. Tell me why, like when I brought this up with some people at, I don't know, Sam's or somewhere, like they said, it kind of starts with the language and words we say and stuff we use. And I'm no academic or scientist. Like I get it. That's probably right in some way. I don't know. But to me, it seems like I don't see, if I watch TV today, I don't see a ton of commercials about, I had PTSD, or I was anxious and worried every day, and then I sought treatment and got it, and now this is how my life has improved. Or I was addicted to something and I sought treatment, and now this is how my life is better. And these things, I don't see all this celebrate, or celebrities or anybody else talking about this stuff, but I see drugs on there all day, or
Yeah.
I see other ads and commercials all over the place that are fixing other things or making me sicker and keeping me on the pill. Either way, we just, as a society, I think we are celebrating the wrong things, and that changes that stigma. Stigma's gotten way better. Let me start all that
Yeah.
conversation
Yeah. Yeah.
over.
For sure.
from the days we were just talking about when I was getting into behavioral, or you were, and from 20 years before that, like my parents, I mean, they've never heard of behavioral health or mental health. That was new age stuff. That didn't make any sense. So we've come a long way. Like it's been great and I love it. But for anything to get better, we have to be serious about actually going all the way and fixing it. Just saying, oh, it's pretty close, and now we just need to use the right words so that everybody feels comfortable. Well, yeah, or we could put some money behind it because we put money behind everything else that is detrimental. So let's get, whether it's, I don't want the government involved in anything, but let's get the government involved or whoever needs to help us normalize and celebrate asking for help and receiving help and getting well. That would be a huge thing instead of, no, let's put billions of dollars behind a new cholesterol medication or something, or what, I don't know, whatever those commercials are advertising.
It is kind of
Yeah.
crazy that like the advertisements that are on TV now are so there's just so much emphasis on like the drugs and not a lot of emphasis on mental health, which is, I mean, I think with the advent of like social media and the last 10 years especially, there's been like a huge spike in the need of mental health. Um, but it is interesting. I hadn't thought about it from that perspective that you don't really see an ad for LE Health or whatever company that is massive and could potentially serve or probably are serving all 50 states. You can get on a Zoom call with a therapist tonight if you wanted to.
I'd love for them and all those people to advertise, but obviously that's going to cost them money, and hopefully it has good results as well. But I mean, a PSA or a celebrity endorse or whatever it is, of, because our society unfortunately cares what these celebrities say and do. But the point is, like, why isn't the country as a whole, wherever that money comes from, saying, hey, it's a good thing. Like, there's a better life out there than what you're struggling with, and you're not alone. It's okay. You can get well. Ask for help. We can help you find good help, and then follow through with it. And it's not the end of the world, and you're not different and terrible and all the things that your parents' generation and everyone else has told you. That's not the case. So let's talk about how we can fix it and make it normal. And then let's celebrate those that are getting well and their lives are improving and so forth. And we're not all focused on the negative and pointing the finger and blame at everybody. It's a whole different perspective and mind shift from what we live in.
I've seen firsthand kind of that stigma and how people uh, approach mental health. And well, in different sort of cycles of my life, I'm originally from Brazil, and my mom, since she retired 20 years ago, she started a nonprofit helping people with addiction issues. And she's been doing that for the last 20, 25 years. And when she comes to visit, I visit her. She lives in Portugal now. She often tells me stories about just horror stories about like the wife is working and she comes home and the husband left to go shoot heroin, and they can't get the help, and they're never going to get the help because of the stigma around like society. We can't, even though this guy is not functional, never going to get help because it's either not available depending on where they're based, or two, they just don't think that they're an addict. So that's like a whole side of things. My
And that,
dad passed away when I was 6 from being an alcoholic. And
yeah,
back
sorry.
then, 30, 40, almost 40 years ago now, there was no conversation. Like it was just, this guy just drinks a lot. He's a functional alcoholic. And today, to your point, like 40 years ago, 20 years ago, 10 years ago, and when you and I got involved in the industry, it's changed a lot. Like more times than not, when somebody has a problem, they're going to at least entertain seeing someone seeking help. And then recently we had a, a, a loss in the family, and my wife and I were looking for like a therapist, and we experienced firsthand like how hard it is to find somebody specializing what you want, and it is hard.
Yeah.
So we're looking for somebody that we wanted to meet in person instead of Zoom, and it took us like 2 months to find somebody. So, and I think our therapist works for one of these kind of calling in aggregators, for lack of a better term, like a company that employs a lot of therapists. And, we're lucky that we can afford it. We're able to pay for it. Some of it is paid through insurance, but I think there's definitely, like you said, let's not put money toward maybe subsidizing drugs or something. Let's put money toward this kind of, treatment, because people definitely need it. And I think if it was a little more available, then people would be more open to, you know, signing up and getting help.
Yeah. And appreciate you sharing that. I'm sorry to hear about your dad, and I want to ask you more about your mom and life in Brazil, and what she is doing now in Portugal. But uh, I'm with you. And so the piece there about you and your wife being able to find help, that's the access that I'm saying that I work on every day, like my industry that everybody's trying to fix. How do we make sure there isn't a supply for the demand? But it's still missing, and there are other issues, like maybe when you're looking for them or somebody that specializes in this, or you can see them in person, or they accept your insurance. All those sort of things all still have some work to be done and to figure it out. But I think that's achievable. The other part is the part that scares me, right? Like those that aren't seeking it for a reason that I don't know, like I can't help them. That I think is where there's a far greater solution than what I've just proposed. But all I mean is that's one simple one. It seems like to me is let's celebrate and make it normal and easy to know that it's okay to have some issues. We've all got some issues. Those are okay. And here's why you're having these feelings, or why you're having these struggles, or why you've turned to a substance to escape or cope, or all these sort of things. And then let's show you where some quality help is and how it can help. What'll change in your life? There's how many people I know in my life that have been through treatment and are completely different now, myself included. I've changed a ton in years, but they can just speak to all the different pieces of their life: physical health, mental health, behavioral health, anything, everything that are so improved, their professional life, everything that all changes. And I'm not saying it's overnight. I'm not saying it's a guarantee. I'm not saying you don't have to do work, that it's not going to be hard. I'm not saying any of that stuff. I just mean it is possible and normal and a good thing. You don't have to be stuck in this space. And I feel like that's a lot of people. When I read that stat that says, 10% of the people that say they need help are getting it, there's a lot of people out there then that are just staying stuck in their reality, in their normal, their life that is not the abundant life, the best life that it could be.
Yeah,
And that's sad.
yeah, I agree.
Sorry, that was down my tangent. The different subsectors of behavioral health that are most valuable currently and what they will be. I went over probably the top two or three. I think digital health has been and is still very, very interesting, because you've got a ton of money that loves to play in the technology space. I don't know if anyone, there's some great ones, but I don't know that anyone's completely figured that out. Like every day there's a new app or invention to say, hey, this is the way that, AI and technology and everything else is going to help us cure people and run the whole giant corporation, the whole conglomerate everywhere. And so far that's proved difficult. It's also been proven, I think, by a few of those companies, much like the autism one, that card that had gone bankrupt and collapsed created a big hole. I think we saw a few total telehealth or total digital health darlings. I don't know if they were necessarily technically unicorns, but large startups that were very well funded go under within the past 2, 3, 4 years due to that. I think people still want to be in person as much as they can. During COVID, it was understandable because of laws and regulations, but I think in the future, it's a very valuable piece that needs to be a part of treatment. But I think we've seen that it's pretty tough to run a 100% telehealth business. It's possible, and some are successful, but it's tougher than we imagined.
Do you see any? I haven't been having this conversation because obviously, as a technology company, we're very much entrenched in AI. And we went to West Coast Symposium last week, and there was a lot of AI conversation, and just, everybody's saying kind of like what you said, oh, this is the next thing. With the advance of AI, do you see a significant portion of treatment itself being automated or augmented by AI in the next, say, 2, 3 years?
2 to 3 years is tough to say the timeline, but I believe so. I just read, or maybe I was listening to something about this. What was it? Somebody, I can't remember if they were in trouble or not, but somebody was talking about their experience with maybe an app or something, that all their treatment was from AI, like their mental health, the stuff they were interacting with was from AI, and it was very, very good. So here's what I would say about that piece. We all know that AI, as it's been introduced into this space, has been basically a perk, right? So to keep the talent that is already hard to afford with the rates not increasing, you've got to find other ways to make them happy, whether that is, AI's writing their notes for them. They don't have to deal all the time, or it's scheduling for them, or it's doing all these other things, doing all the back office stuff you guys do. The greats, like, it's fantastic. But, is that AI? Yeah, it's using AI, I'm sure, and it's using that technology to make things a lot more streamlined and good. And I love it. But the real question is what you've asked here, right? When is AI going to replace the human component, or is it going to provide the therapy? And I feel the same way that I do about physical healthcare with it, is that, and I'm no technology guy, so take this with a grain of salt, but I just think if it's got a database, I guess when I'm thinking of AI, I'm thinking of more of a large language model, but if it's got a huge database of a bunch of information from a bunch of great minds of psychology and psychiatry, counselors, therapists, clinicians, etc., maybe religious books, maybe the Buddha in there, maybe God, maybe, you know what I'm saying, maybe teachings of Jesus, maybe all sorts of things, and I'm able to contact it and go, hey, I'm worried about this bill that's due, or this meeting tomorrow, or whatever, or I can't seem to stop smoking, whatever it is, right? Can't seem to drink it. If it is able to interact with me and give me helpful information that I want to read in a way that I want to read it, and it goes through and all that stuff, and that is great. And then while it is putting me in touch, or while it is working to get me in touch with a very capable human, I don't know if that's a bad thing. I understand those that are in that space are gonna be like, yeah, it's doing what I do, so it's not good. I get that. I don't want anybody necessarily replaced. I want AI to augment and to help, to complement things, but it's going to be a tough one, man, because I think if you have, like, that's often what I'm looking for, right, is the list of all the answers. So if you have a large language model that has all the best advice on any topic in one place, and it can just scroll out, one after the other that relates to my question, my curiosity, I'm sure a big fan of that. Now, do I want that forever, or do I want to have a human relationship? Yeah, I want the human relationship, but I'm saying right now it's pretty cool to get the answers that I want, or the stuff that I can read to learn.
Yeah, I think we all don't want to be in the movie Her, where you're talking to a bot that's also talking to 10,000 people, and you found out at the end.
Dude, that was what, I hope I'm not combining the stories, but that was what I had heard. So that's what happened. So the AI was giving mental health, I think, or at least it was having a conversation with this child. That's okay. So the mom was suing someone, whoever it was, because their chatbot, their AI chatbot, had been talking to this child, her son. And I guess the chatbot was supposed to be some sort of form of Daenerys Targaryen from Game of Thrones. And
Oh, I heard about that. Didn't he tell him to jump off a building or something, or you should kill yourself?
eventually, yeah, she said something that he was like, I'm coming home to you, or something. And she said, good. And I think he shot himself. And so they're all avoiding. I don't want to get into that. I'm just,
Yeah,
they're
no,
all
I know what you're saying. There's a whole conversation about like, and I had this really interesting conversation with somebody who's at the conference, is based in Canada, and about like parameters that you can set to sort of like triggers for, hey, when does a human have to get involved? Because this is getting off the rails.
right. Amen.
But yeah, I think I'm with you. Like, I imagine a future where the human doesn't get replaced. It's enhanced, its capabilities as a clinician get enhanced by the use of like this massive data set that's like the world's knowledge in this LLM. And as you're talking to somebody, it kind of pinpoints certain things to discuss or things to watch out for. And I don't know, some
Yeah.
version of that. I think generationally is going to be hard to replace the human, even if like a company came out, if OpenAI tomorrow came out with a therapist that can plug in and talk, even in like human-like form, which is not, far away. I think people of like, I don't know, older than 10 years old are going to want to talk to a human being. They're not going to want to talk to an AI. Maybe like 10, 15, 20 years from now, and the 10-year-old is now 30 years old, it's going to be fine because they grew up and kind of that's all they know. But I just don't see that. And I always think of AI as like human plus AI instead of human versus AI.
Yeah, me too. I mean, that's what I hope for. But I do know, as the younger generation is comfortable with technology, they seem to be, some of them, less comfortable with me, with a human, right? With looking me in the eyes or having
That's
a
a whole
regular
nother
conversation.
problem, right? A
Yeah.
whole other
So
situation.
something else you got to deal with there. And yeah, I agree with you. But even if I mean, we're all trying to push it as fast as we can. We all know the way that's going to end, right? Nobody is putting up those guardrails like you mentioned. Like, we know what we do as a society. We just keep trying to push these things without any sense of, culpability or any sense of responsibility about how we safeguard this thing. When the truth is, there's some other things it could still be very, very helpful with that don't replace people or don't harm people. Like, how come when I'm getting some sort of healthcare, I still have to fill out 10 forms of the same thing at 10 different times at 10 different places? Like, hello? Like, isn't this an easy part for AI to do all the dumb shit, like all the paperwork? Like, let's knock out all the redundant tasks with AI, and then we could talk about, are they going to replace therapists, or are they going to, yeah, I got plenty of frustrations. I'm going to try not to let my cynical stuff.
I think we're going to have another podcast just to talk about AI cynical feelings.
Right. Yes.
You probably have to go, so I'm going to ask you two more questions and then we can wrap up. So the first one is, if you weren't doing what you're doing now, if you weren't the founder of your company and have gone through, down this financial career, what would you be doing? What would be like, wave a magic wand, money is no object. What would you be doing? And I hear all kinds of interesting things. So
so that without any thought, then without me getting too deep, I'm gonna give you three quick ones. Okay, so the dream job as a kid was a sports agent, and so that would still be up there. I love sports. I mean, I guess the real dream job would be to play the sports.
Yeah. What's your team? What's your favorite team?
Oh, I mean, which sport?
You have multiple. Which sport? I mean, also you're in Texas, so.
I'm a big fan of all sports. I think soccer, I played and coached and all that the longest, and then probably basketball, but I don't do as much of that now. It's mostly like golf and volleyball and pickleball and some other stuff now. Yeah, I guess the first thing would be to be one of the athletes, but I waved goodbye to that a long time ago.
I did the same thing. Happened to me too.
Yeah, so secondarily, then I think it was to be their agent. And then I'll tell you the other two things would be, one, I really like what I do. So I guess the nice guy answer is also that kind of doing what I do, maybe not in the same form or capacity, but I mean, I enjoy teaching and helping, and I enjoy making investments. So no matter what industry or in what capacity or how, me trying to figure out how to identify and solve problems and how to put things in the places they need to be to grow and to solve those problems, to make them as good as they can be, is always interesting to me. I think people are usually the solution to most of those. And yeah, investing, I get into that conversation for a long time as well, but it would still be in some form or way, shape, or form investing. And then the last one, would be, like I'm still trying to teach myself the harmonica. A hobby is, I would want to be a professional fly fisherman, right? I mean, nice. Like playing these sort of things that are my hobbies that I would like to be able to do. Yeah, those would be my other job. I guess the altruistic one, really, honestly, like I would never do this, Humberto, but it would be to fix healthcare, right? So healthcare just, I became a patient of this healthcare system maybe 2000, I don't know, 18, 19. And it's been a miserable experience for 6 years. So I'm going to save everybody the boredom of hearing about it. I just mean, if I had a bone in my body that wanted to go tackle a big project, that's probably what I'd go after currently. Healthcare is my current, whatever, bugaboo, whatever you
And to some extent, the reason it doesn't get fixed is because it's really hard, right? And no one really knows, like, where do you start, right?
Yep.
But yeah, I'm the same way. Like we've had some, I've become a patient a few years ago, and I'm like, how's this possible? How does it work this way? There's just no way that it's this complicated.
Right. And this, yeah, poor. I mean, I know there's good people involved in it still. And I know that some regulations and things that are there were probably put in there with good hearts or good spirits, but man, it is just a fiasco beyond. It's so terrible.
Last question. What are some books that you recommend? Putting you on the spot here. I probably should have told you I was going to ask you this, but what are some books you recommend? Or maybe not even books, for documentaries or any kind of content out there, podcasts, whatever. I used to say books, but I think people consume content in different ways now. So
podcasts I could rattle off for you. I'll do that in a second. Books, I'm trying to think of what I just finished. So a lot of them are faith-based stuff that I'm reading for my spiritual walk, at church. Nice. But I read Sahil Bloom, 5 Types of Wealth recently. Very, very good. Man, Cal Newport. There's a bunch of good stuff that I read in the nonfiction arena. That's most of what I read. But then I try to read some fiction, at night to go to sleep. I'm trying to think of... Yeah, that one's good. This one was good, and sort of on this topic, I think my Wednesday morning group is reading this one. No More Mr. Nice Guy.
Mm.
Not bad at all. I don't know if I agree with 100% of it, but very, very good about boundaries, and then about, us all, a lot of us making decisions concerned about what other people's
Mm.
acceptance or are of us, right? Very common thing. But podcasts I can go on forever, right? I like Rogan, I like Tim Ferriss. Yeah, Lex Friedman. I
Love
watched
Lex
a lot.
Friedman.
Chris Williamson, or Chris Williams. I'm sorry. Anybody that's got Naval on. Yeah, all those guys, they're all the same click, I feel like. So I turn on the YouTube or the Spotify, and like if you watch one, it's like here's 12 more by the same
I
type
know.
of
Yeah.
people. You're like all in the
Yeah.
same club hanging out.
I know. I know.
I
Awesome.
hope
I
you
actually just downloaded the No More
blows
Mr.
up.
Nice Guy. I want to check that out.
Yeah, man, it's not bad. We could talk about it offline, but it's been helpful. I think we're probably halfway through in this group, but there's what 6, 7 guys of us guys in that one. Everybody's single, but some are divorced, or some have kids, some are like me, never married or whatever. But everybody's got a different experience, and they all decided. One guy had read it before in therapy, and he was like, "I think this would do y'all some good," because everybody had a story that was fairly similar.
Nice.
Not
Awesome.
bad.
Well, thank you again for being here, Jacob. It's always a pleasure to chat with you. I enjoyed talking to you because you're very candid about your answers. You're very real about not bullshitting people, bullshitting around and beating around the bush. Appreciate you making time to be here today. Where can people find you if they want to touch base with you?
Healthcarecapadvisors.com is our website. I'm sure that we have some social media links on there. I'm not very good at that stuff or know where they are. And Jacob at healthcarecapadvisors.com is how you can email me anytime. Happy to give you phone numbers. I'll say, let me put in two last things here. Okay. So, kind of on the technology piece, but about our field. I'll go quick. We talk about tracking results and building standards within behavioral health, mental health. Okay. This is more in your realm, your world of technology. The other day, because I am a patient of healthcare, I was looking for a way they could like put a chip in me or something, right? I don't want to buy a watch and a ring and a headband and glasses and 10 other things to figure out you told me I'm not going to bullshit people, so I'll be honest with you about these things. So I'm not going to go buy all those things so that I can figure out what my biomarkers are, right? How my body's performing and how I'm doing sleep, eat, nutrition, workout, exercise, right? So I couldn't find one. But when we talk about standards in behavioral health, mental health, I don't know why it's not a more collaborative conversation with technology and with all of healthcare, with physical healthcare, with everybody about this stuff. There's got to be a way. It doesn't have to be a chip put in you, but there has to be a way that we can track overall healthcare people and the improvement or the decrease, whatever, if we're really concerned about people getting well and actual healthcare, not sick care. Secondly, that kind of leads into that value-based care conversation. So because they're all saying you need some sort of standards and some sort of measuring. This is all lip service. This has all been, the more research I do into this, the more I talk to people, the more I realize it's all, everybody's just saying things to make people happy and get them off their back. There's nothing happening. And there's no incentive to, or no one's incentivized money-wise, so there's no way that it's going to. If you look at from the insurer's point of view, think about how many people they insure. So if you have a behavioral health thing that isn't, associated with physical health, with primary care or something like that, it's just standalone, no matter how big you are. I don't know how many Acadia has now, but it's a huge public company. I mean, no matter how big you are, say you got 2,000 patients, maybe you have 2,000 beds or something like that. I mean, that is not enough lives that you're responsible for, that you're taking risk over for, to get a value-based contract like these. I talked to a small regional payer that was, he was saying like 5,000, I think, would probably be our minimum to build a value-based contract for, like that many lives at risk that you're taking responsibility for. So these people keep talking about it, but that's my issue from the payer side. I don't think there's any real incentive. I don't think anybody's serious about it. And from the buyer or from the provider side, I think they've got to find a way to integrate all these healthcares. I mean, behavioral health might have grown and it might not be the redheaded stepchild anymore, but it's still fringe. Like it still needs to be part of overall healthcare. And if we really cared about people getting well, where you say we don't have standards and we don't have a way to track results, it's all very relative. How do you tell all that? Well, then let's talk about total healthcare. So if I'm at, let's hypothesize for a second. Sorry, I'm going down this hole.
No.
If I'm coming to a doctor and he's my primary care physician, and then, he's got access to these specialists if something's wrong with me, there's a massage place there, there's a therapist, psychologist, psychiatrist, whatever, counselor, whoever, behavioral health, mental health arena, there's nutritionist and a trainer and whatever, sleep, right? And so they're all involved in this place. And my health is determined to be, say, 60% of the 100% it should be. Well, if I come back in 6 months and it's 90%, but during those 6 months, I did everything that was told for me to do. I saw that psychologist or whoever, every week for that time. I saw this trainer and went to the gym. I ate right or different. I slept better, all these things, right? I did all the things it was told to do. My health went to 90. I don't think we have to figure out, if we're really concerned with healthcare and not sick care, I don't think we have to divvy up and allocate how much of that 30% gain in health came from which person. The point is, I got 30% better, or much more percent better. I got 50% better, but I'm saying I gained 30%. Yeah, it's just my 2 cents. And I'm no scientist to figure that out, no administrator to figure out all that problem. But, I don't think that the value-based care conversation is what we make it out to be in this space. And I think we need to integrate not only with other healthcare, but also with other technology to be able to create some sort of standards and tracking and results and outcomes that are somewhat measurable, but overall healthcare, overall me being well and improving. That's my quick 2 cents on it.
Well, I agree 1,000%. I was talking earlier that we had a loss in the family. We ended up losing our daughter at 31 weeks, pregnant, and my wife kept going for ultrasounds every, it was high risk pregnancy. And so our daughter had growth restrictions and ended up passing at 31 weeks. But the thing that struck me the hardest was not once did anybody ask about what she was eating or whether she was exercising or anything else. They would just do her blood pressure. They would do an ultrasound and say, we don't know why there's a growth restriction. But didn't say, like, are you eating McDonald's every day? Are you like just sitting on the couch eating Cheetos? And she was seeing a therapist. There were all these other, like you said, these other health cares that were taking place. And there was just no, like, her OB didn't know anything about what was going on there. So it's just like, I was kind of like dumbfounded that these things are so siloed. That's just our experience. Everyone goes through some version. You're going through this, and everyone goes through some version of this, horrible way that things are managed. And I went for a primary, my primary visit every year. Saw a person for the first time. We moved recently, and so didn't ask anything about my past. Just here's a blood test. Here's check your pulse. Feel you here. How you doing? Whatever. And then that's it. And just send me home with like 3 different medications for things that I could probably deal with if I just ate a little better, exercise a little better. So it's like very strange.
On the revenue wheel.
Yeah, it's not like we don't have a playbook. Like there are other countries around the world that do it, and of course, like our population is much higher. The economics here are different, but it is just like mind blowing. The amount of money that we spend on healthcare versus the actual care we get is crazy.
The amount of money in everyone is not improving their health. Like if you think of insurance, right? So that's a problem for me. I'm a free market capitalist. I'm all for people making money. I don't villainize the rich. I don't care how much it makes. It's all great. I'm not villainizing anyone. But insurance doesn't create anything, right? All it is we're relaying risk from ourselves onto something else and paying a price to do that. They can set whatever target they want for insurance for that thing, but it seems weird to me. Like I think the system is broken is what I'm saying. I don't care that these people make that amount of money, but if your executives from all those companies are taking home 8 and 9 figures per year, I think the system's broken. So there's a problem there. Like all we're doing is relaying risk. You're not providing me with iPhone. There's not a new product or new service that you're giving me. I'm just not wanting to pay. If something crazy happened that I didn't know about, I don't want to be liable for that. So I'll pay something to not be, right? So something to insure against that. That's not a business that should, I'm not,
Yeah, you're
I'm
literally
not
in
a,
the business of denying care to Jacob to give care to Humberto at the minimum possible cost.
that's trouble. And I'm not a communist. Like, I'm not saying what your profit can be. You can make whatever you want. I just mean something's messed up with the system. If a business, an industry such as that, insurance, is able to, bonus and pay out executives 8 and 9 figures every year, something is going wrong. And that might not be that, right? That might be the payer. That might be the provider that is paying too much, or the whole system that they've got going on. I don't even know if it's real, the numbers that I see back and forth. It might be, it could be a number of different things that are the reason that's happened, that's broken. But I'm just saying something's broken. That's not the way that was ever initially constructed, and it's gotten out of hand. And that's why you talk about how to fix healthcare or what the problems are, and there's other playbooks. One problem is we let many other problems, but one of them is that we let insurance run it a long time ago, and they are completely in charge of the whole industry. And it is not for us to get well. It is not for us to get better.
No,
Dude.
and that cat's out of the bag. I think that's gonna, I mean, as many smart people as you put in front of this, I think that's a real hard change, I think. That there's so much money involved in like lobbying, and I don't know how to fix that.
Amen. Dude, I am so sorry for you guys. I'm going to be praying for you. I had no idea. I'm sorry to hear that, and thanks for sharing. I'd love to talk to you about it, but I'm sorry you had to deal with that. That's
Yeah,
gosh.
thank you. I appreciate that. It's been by far the hardest thing we've ever dealt with and are gonna keep dealing with forever. It's not like a thing that we're gonna deal with and make go away or fix or um, and it's yeah I we'll talk about it more, but it's a lot of lessons though. Like I'm really trying to stay tuned to the positive side of things and lessons and things that we're learning in terms of valuing relationships and valuing, like prioritizing some certain things in our lives. And it's certainly, you don't want to go through this experience to learn lessons, but it's been humbling in terms of the kind of support that we got from people, that we didn't know, the kind of just like groups of people that deal with parents that have had losses. And I mean, just that's been overwhelming out from a positive perspective. But yeah, just like it was about 4 months ago, and we're still very much like in the trenches, not out of the woods yet, but it's
Dude, I could imagine.
doing much better than we were like a month or two before ago, for sure.
So sorry. That is so
Yeah.
sorry. I
Thank
couldn't
you so
imagine
much.
be grieving for you. I hope you have some time to, gosh, I'm sorry. Well, I'll be praying for you, and anything I can do, I would love to be here for you. Happy to help and happy to listen anytime.
Appreciate that, man. Thank you so much. And thanks again for making time. We ran over. Hopefully I didn't get into any other upcoming meetings you had. We had a
Nope,
good,
I'm all
great
good.
conversation, and I look forward to connecting next time.
Yeah, sounds great, buddy.
All
Have a
right.
good one,
Thanks so
Umberto.
much. Bye bye.
See you guys.